Verdict, count one, sexual battery. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn in the above entitled cause, do upon our oaths find as follows. Defendant is guilty of the crime of sexual battery and set punishment at 8 years. Defendant is guilty of the crime of procuring lewd exhibition and punishment is set at 5 years. Defendant is not guilty of the crime of rape in the second degree. Defendant is guilty of the crime of forcible oral sodomy and punishment is set at 20 years. Defendant is guilty of the crime of rape in the first degree and punishment is set at 30 years. Let me ask the jury, is this your verdict, so say you all? Yes. Counsel, would you like to examine the verdict forms? Mr. Holtzclaw, this jury finds you guilty of the various counts.
And not only do I know you Negroes like the back of my hand, I know y'all's community like the back of my hand. And this is the reason why I'm going to prove in this video that that cop really didn't rape these women. It is my contention that those relationships were consensual.
I declare war. David Carroll had the audacity to say that those 13 black women were involved in consensual relationships with Officer Daniel Holtzclaw. Despite the fact that there's been a trial in this case, this dude actually has the nerve to say that these women were involved in a consensual relationship with that rapist pig, Daniel Holtzclaw. There was a month-long trial. A jury heard evidence for a month. They heard the 13 black women testify. They were presented with evidence in this case. Physical evidence and testimony. This jury, an all-white jury, after deliberating for 45 hours, after considering all this evidence, they found former Oklahoma City officer Daniel Holtzclaw guilty of 4 counts of first-degree rape, of indecent exposure, sexual battery, forcible oral sex. They found him guilty of these things. And despite that, you have this house Negro, David Carroll, actually having the audacity to defend this cop. But this is what David Carroll does. This is what he does. This is what he specializes in. No matter what happens, no matter what the circumstances are, this boot-licking, shoe-shining, ass-kissing Uncle Tom always manages to find a way to defend the oppressor. He always finds a way to defend the abuser. He always finds a way to defend the killer. Just like a good, loyal slave. Brother Malcolm told us about the house Negro who loves his master so much that when the master's house is on fire, the house Negro is the first to do everything in his power to put out that fire. And that's what this house Negro, David Carroll, does. Despite the fact that a jury found this man guilty of all these charges, despite all the testimony from all these black women, you have this shoe shine boy, this tap dancing Uncle Tom, still defending this nonsense, just like a loyal slave. And it's despicable. This man claims to be some kind of intellectual juggernaut.
Different. Just like the female in the church who knows that her pastor is married. She talks to his wife. She sings in the choir with his wife. She comments on how lovely her daughter's hair looked this Sunday. She knows the guy is married with 3 children, but she still winds up sleeping with him anyway. And then when the relationship goes sour, the first thing she want to cry out is, I've been manipulated. You sexually assaulted me. You took advantage of me. And that's only stated after the fact, but you knew going in. You knew, he didn't hide it. You knew this Negro was married, but you still dealt with him anyway. And that's the same thing with these sisters who's dealing with this cop. It is my contention that those relationships were consensual, and the only time that they became a problem is when those sisters got tired and they done what most women will do in that case. They're going to scream that you exploiting me, especially if they're dealing with somebody who has some kind of authority. In the case of the pastor, yeah, you the pastor of this church. You supposed to be a man of God. Well, you supposed to be a woman of God.
He claims all of this stuff. He claims to be a man that uses logic and intelligence. But yet he engages in illogical arguments. He makes sweeping generalizations about black women. And he uses the example of a pastor having a consensual relationship with a black woman, a consensual affair with a black woman. And he says that black women essentially, when they are displeased with the relationship, they want to talk about how they were manipulated and such. And he uses this general rule to apply to a situation involving black women who were raped by a cop, to basically determine that these women were engaged in a consensual relationship. This flies in the face of all the evidence. You can't apply a generalization like that to a situation involving rape. You simply can't. It just doesn't make any kind of sense at all. Again, these women were raped, and that was established after the evidence was presented. Not after watching a news story, not after reading an article, after the evidence was presented. But you still have all these idiots who follow this imbecile. They still cheer him on. They still support him. They still celebrate his opinions as if he's some kind of prophet or he's dropping some heavy knowledge, when in fact he's just a slave, when in fact he's just an idiot. In fact, I mean, it's very disappointing seeing these comments. And I really think that most of these people are just posers, white people pretending to be black. And if these are black men, they are the scum of the earth. They are the epitome of what a weak black man is. Here you have black women who are being exploited, black women who are being raped, and these punk ass cowards want to defend the rapists. That speaks volumes. And you have this guy, David Carroll. He puts his controversial opinions out on a public platform, and then he has the nerve to complain about people challenging his viewpoints. If your arguments are sound, if your arguments are logical, you should be prepared to defend them anytime and anywhere. But instead of doing that like a man, all this dude does is whine about people debating against his opinions. He goes on to talk about how people like myself are more concerned with opinions than we are with actions. Simply because we debate some of his videos or some of his positions. Nothing can be more ridiculous than that. Anyone who watches my main channel, New Possibilities, they know that I regularly address the actions that are taking place in our community. I regularly address police brutality. When these cops kill our people, I address those actions, both on my blog and on my channel. When there are despicable incidents of inner city violence, like the killing of Tyshawn Lee and other young people in our communities, I deal with those actions on my channel. I condemn those actions. When our people are just subjected to racism in general, I condemn the actions of the races of the oppressors. Unlike people like David Carroll, who defend the actions of these people, who defend the actions of the killers, who defend this stuff. Unlike him, I challenge it. I speak out against it. This man suggested that it was insane to debate against him, to challenge his viewpoints. I will tell you what's insane. It is insane for a black man to defend a white racist. It is insane for a black man to do so. It is insane for a black man to defend a man who rapes black women. That's insane. It's insane for a black man to defend racist after racist after racist just for a few dollars from AdSense. That's insane. This guy talked about how we challenge anyone who wants to escape from the quote unquote plantation. And he talked about white liberals and all that stuff. You are not escaping from a plantation. You are maintaining a plantation. You are like the overseer on the plantation who does the white man's bidding, who delights in beating his fellow black people in order to please his white master. You're the one who would probably tell the master about the plan to rebel against the master. You're the one that would help the master capture a runaway slave. You're nothing but a modern day slave catcher. You are despicable. You epitomize everything that Malcolm X talked about when he mentioned the house Negro. Instead of defending black women, you join the master in his abuse of black women. You are a bottom-feeding parasite. And I will conclude on this note. Black men have an obligation to protect their community. You have an obligation to defend and protect our women. That's a duty. If we can fight over blocks and streets that we don't own, then surely we can fight against police brutality, police misconduct, We can fight against the exploitation of our community at the hands of Arabs and Asians and all other foreigners who come into our community and pimp our community and milk our community dry. We can stand up to those people. But David Carroll is the wrong person to criticize black men for failing to do so, because this man makes it his mission here on YouTube to defend the people who abuse our community. And for that, he's despicable. He's the lowest of the low, the worst of the worst.